Okay, hi everyone, welcome back. And in this update, we are going to check out Litecoin's price chart and basically what we expected and talked about in the previous video played out. Because if you remember, the last time that we talked about LTC, I think we were right around the highs, and the idea was that, well, okay, clearly we do have a beautiful trend line in here, but the problem is that the price touched it way more than a couple of times. So odds are there are actually like a decent amount of liquidity under the lows, and the price does have a habit of grabbing those liquidities. That's why we said, yep, most likely in the short term we are headed lower in LTC in order to take the lowest low for the first target, about $80.50, but we may end up going quite a bit lower than that, and that pretty much happened. And then we said we want to have a rather strong bounce in Litecoin, and I think we are actually having a decent bounce, but whether this is actually part of a bullish process and the final low is in or not, that can be up for debate. Why is that? Let's just delete all these things and go around here. You see, in terms of Elias waves, if you want to argue that we're going to have our final low around this region, let's say this is like a very important support area, then okay, off of the lows, you have to be able to find a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave on the upside. This specific scenario is called an impulsive movement. Rules for it are, we should not have overlapping of the waves between wave 2 and 4, and in any kind of 5 wave, our wave 3 should not be the smallest wave. And in terms of the sub waves, we're gonna have 5 wave up into wave 1, 3, and 5. There we go. And for our corrections for wave 2 and 4, okay, what just happened? We're gonna have different scenarios. The shape of them honestly doesn't really matter a whole lot. Let's say maybe, sure, ABC into wave 4 and like a WXY into wave 2. Now, here's a very important point. Before this 5 wave on the upside, if you are also able to find a 5 wave, this time on the downside, that is actually going to strengthen the bullish argument, indicating hopefully this is going to be our final low. Now, why do we care about this thing so much? Because if, as opposed to a 5 wave, maybe you're able to identify an ABC, generally like a 3 wave movement, at that point you need to be careful and you need to consider the possibility of having something called, let's say, an ABC running flat, and that one looks like this. Let's go around here, excuse me. Okay, this is our initial move up into a correction for wave B, which in it we are going to take this initial low and then a good move up into C, but in it we are not going to take the height of our wave A. And for the sub waves, ABC into A, ABC into B, followed by a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave up into C. So as you can see, even according to this thing, off of the lowest low, what do you have? A 5 wave on the upside, and that actually might trick you into believing that, yup, we have hit the lows, and you're going to be bullish with a lot of confidence, which is, in an ideal scenario, not really great. Now, having said that, let's go on the live chart and see what's happening in the short term. So I think there's really no denying the fact that this is very much, in my view, a 1, 2, wave 3 to about this point, correction for 4, another move up into wave 5. So first bullish sign is definitely, in my view, this. Second bullish sign, I think you might be able to find the subwaves in here for an A, B, C zigzag, but our move down might actually continue, since I think it was somewhere around $78 that we created a decent gap in 30-minute time frame as a result of this bounce happening way too fast. And I do think gaps 95+% of the time are going to get filled. So you know what? Let's expect a bit of a continuation of this move down for LTC. Now, let's talk about some maybe not necessarily optimistic signs. And the first one definitely comes down to, again, once more, this move down happening, I would say, in quite a strong manner. Why is this thing important? Because if this is really a correction, okay, one characteristic of it is usually, not always, but definitely usually, being more slow and choppy, and this I don't really think right now at least falls into that category, so maybe we should be a bit patient. Now, the second important sign that you need to be aware of is actually this move on the downside, And the fact that I think it does actually look a bit like maybe a 3-wave movement. I don't know, let's say like an A triangle into wave B and another move down into C, as opposed to a 5-wave. So in other words, here is what I'm about to tell you. In Litecoin, sure, we do have 5-wave off of the lows. This technically might be an optimistic sign. However, at the same time, think about this possibility indicating this is A, this is B, this is C, overall in form of a running flat, suggesting our move down is going to continue a little bit more in an impulsive manner. And again, since this isn't necessarily that much like a slow and choppy move down, maybe this is actually an impulse, and unfortunately the final low is not in yet. So the real question is this: what should we do in Litecoin at the moment? I think right now we need to, first things first, expect maybe like another 4-5% move on the downside, and then if we end up having a very strong bounce in form of a 5-wave, that could be a good sign. But I need you to have your eyes on a potential, not confirmed yet at least, but definitely a potential head and shoulder structure. If we go above the next line right in here, which is I think about, let's say, $88, and then do a bit of a pullback and then get a continuation of the move up, that could be, in my view, definitely an optimistic sign. So what you want to do is this: in like very short term, first things first, you need to calm down. Second thing, sure, this can be technically a bullish setup, but it's not enough. You need to pay full attention to the next move, and I do think one way or the other we are going to have a bit of a bounce from these areas. But whether our bounce is going to be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a very strong move, or maybe a slow and choppy move down, that is actually going to make all the difference, and I need you to pay full attention to that bounce. Okay, in an ideal scenario, if the bottom is in, you want to see a very strong move off of these levels in Litecoin in order to get a break of the next line and confirm that yes, we are having in here indeed a head and shoulder structure. And by the way, what can be a likely target for this head and shoulder? First things first, you have to put your chart on regular scale and then measure the height of your pattern from here to about this point, excuse me, and put this thing at your breaking point. Let's say we're going to break it around this area. This is giving you about like a $1 to $103 Litecoin, and if we get there in an impulsive manner, again, I do think that is going to be a great sign indicating hopefully the bottom is set. And I hope I explained everything well and you understood what is going on in Litecoin's price chart. And until the next update, I hope you have a wonderful time with your family and loved ones. Goodbye.